Chair Kearns, as I've been monitoring, we do now have 5 of our members present. Um, if you wanted to call the meeting to order.
Okay, great. Thank you for letting me know that. And if others come in, we'll acknowledge that. Good morning, everyone. Again, this is Terry Kearns. This is the statewide substance use response working group, the SURG response subcommittee. It's February 3rd, 11 a.m., 11:03 actually. So we'll go ahead and begin our subcommittee meeting. Welcome to the members and to everyone who's joined us today. I will start by asking Ms. Duarte to take our roll.
Thank you, Chair Kearns. Robert Banghart. Peter Handy.
Present.
Nicole Hicks. Dr. Shayla Holmes.
Present.
Dr. Terry Kearns.
Present.
Christine Payson.
Present.
Bud Shaw.
Present.
Senator Jeff Stone. Chair Kearns, with 5 out of our 8 members present, we do have a quorum to move forward with our meeting. And if any additional members join, I will let you know.
Great, thank you. Again, welcome, members. We have a bit of work to do today, so I'm glad we reached quorum. We'll start with item number 2 on our agenda, which is public comment. And public comment will be received via Zoom by raising your hand or unmuting yourself when asked for public comment. Public comment should be limited to 3 minutes per person. No action may be taken upon a matter raised under this item of the agenda unless the matter itself has been specifically included on an agenda as an item upon which action may be taken. That's pursuant to NRS 241.021. And if you're dialing in from a telephone, please dial 719-359-4580. When prompted, enter the meeting ID 884-0825-1817, and then press *6 so that the host can unmute you. And members of the public are requested to refrain from commenting outside the designated public comment periods unless specifically called upon by the chair. So we'll start. Do we have any public comment?
Chair Kearns, while we're waiting for anyone to come off mute or raise their hand to indicate they'd like to make public comment, I wanted to note for the record that member Nicole Hicks has joined our meeting.
Great, thank you. And welcome, Nicole.
Thank you.
I'm seeing no raised hands. Are you seeing anything, Crystal?
I'm not.
Okay, we'll move on to the next agenda item and we will have a public comment period at the end of the meeting as well. Agenda item number 3 is review and approve minutes from the November 4th, 2025 response subcommittee meeting. So at this point, I would ask if there are any recommended edits on those November 4th meeting minutes or any comments. Hearing none, I would ask for a motion to approve the November 4th meeting minutes.
So moved. This is Bud.
Thank you, Bud. Do we have a second?
This is Pete.
Christine Payson, I'll second.
Great. Thank you, Christine. So we have Bud Shaw who made the motion and Christine Payson who seconded it. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Any abstentions? Hearing none, the meeting minutes have passed by unanimously from all the members present. We will move on to agenda item number 4, which is just a review of our recommendation submission process, and I will hand it over to Mr. Warte to cover the process.
Thank you, Chair Kearns. We just wanted to remind members, because we are operating under a different calendar this year, which we will talk about at the end of the meeting, to solidify that for you. But we are still looking for recommendations if any members have any. And the process for submitting recommendations is to use a survey link that is provided by SEI. I will show you that and demonstrate it in a second. But if you review that survey, we would ask that you complete each section of the survey to the best of your ability. As you're formulating a recommendation, you may not have all of the information, and that is okay. We can go back in and edit it and add to it, as you'll see, hopefully, members doing later today with some recommendations that have already been submitted. Be prepared to present the recommendation to members at the next regularly scheduled subcommittee meeting. This doesn't need to be a formal presentation. There's no slides needed. You can just provide the information to myself or my colleague Casey Docena, who you see on the meeting, and we can get it into the slides for the meeting. And then if you need help with developing the recommendation, our team can assist with gathering information or connecting with subject matter experts. And I would note that as we collect this information, even though the survey doesn't need to be completed all at once, we do pull from that survey and the information collected to insert into the annual report. So we ask that as you're filling it out, you are considering how it will read in the annual report. And if you have any additional details, add those in so that we can have that kind of seamless transition into the annual report. I'm going to stop sharing this slide really quickly and just show you the survey, if that's okay with the chair.
Please do. Sorry, I was muted.
So you can see this is describing why we're collecting recommendations, what our timeline is. So we are operating on a different timeline in previous years. We need to have a slate of recommendations prepared for the April full SURG meeting. That's not the final recommendations, but it is the slate of recommendations that all members can look at and respond to and maybe make edits to or request edits to. So that's what we're aiming for. That's why this meeting and our next meeting of just the subcommittee are really important for finalizing the slate of recommendations that will go before the SURG in April. We ask for your name so that we can circle back to you if we need to about any questions we have. Yes, that's asking you to enter the information. And then it's just a description of the recommendation. If you have any justification or background for it, and you'll see some of that come up on the slides we have later for the recommendations that are currently being considered. And then any research or links that support that justification. We also ask that you consider which elements of AB 374, the legislation that established the SURG, that your recommendation connects to, and you can select all that apply. Many of the response recommendations have to do with the criminal justice system or several of these areas because your task under the legislation is very broad. So you are asked to complete any of those that are relevant. And then there are cross-cutting elements that apply for all of the subcommittees, examining data, making recommendations to DHS. So that's another area that we would ask for you to check a box. All of these things help the recommendation be more specific and help legislators understand, if that is who the recommendation is ultimately targeted to, understand what next steps might need to be taken. AB 374 also has special recognition for different populations. And we might remember, if you were on the SURG, the group last year, we looked at how those recommendations aligned across these different populations and which populations might need additional attention. So this is something that we do include in the annual report and we look at across all of the recommendations. And then there's a question about the action step. you also may not know, and that's okay to say. That's what we do hope to get member feedback on. And then time frame, fiscal note. The questions after that ask you to rate the impact of the recommendation, the urgency of the recommendation, the capacity for state systems and partners to implement the recommendation, and if there is any way in which the recommendation advances racial and health equity. And then it asks for a presenter or subject matter expert if you have one. It's also okay to make a recommendation to have a speaker. You don't have to go through the whole survey. You can just email myself about that, and we can work on doing the outreach if you are considering a recommendation but don't yet have all the information you think that the committee would need. So that is the recommendations process. I'm happy to answer any questions members have.
Crystal, just out of curiosity, is there an opportunity within the survey to have more than one recommendation?
That's a great question. Yes, you would just submit another survey entry. So unlike a true survey that might be allow for only one response, you can go in to that link and submit as many surveys as you have recommendations.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Any other questions from the committee members? I would just say that I know it seems like a lot of information and somewhat overwhelming to have all of that. And as Ms. Duarte said, you don't have to have all of the fields filled out when you submit a recommendation. The support we get from SEI has been great in helping to get some of the information if you don't have it. And I know also if there's another member on the committee that has specific information, we can also bring them in to help fill out any of the fields that you don't have. So, so if you do have a recommendation, that is the process, and it's worked really well. And one thing that I would add, having presented our annual report with our recommendations to numerous groups throughout the state, the process that we have gone through by aligning it with the legislation and having references and research and making sure that we're looking at special populations has really been well received. People tend to feel that the SURG puts a lot of good background and work into developing these recommendations. Crystal, is there anything else you'd like to add?
No, thank you.
Okay. I think that's good for this topic. So we're ready to move on to item number 5 on our agenda, which is to discuss and draft proposed 2025 response subcommittee recommendations. And I think that for today, we may have some people on the phone who can help us help with some of these recommendations if we have any questions on them. So we'll go to the first recommendation, which is recommendation number 1 by Dr. Shayla Holmes. And Shayla, if you don't mind, I'll hand this over to you to address.
Thanks, Terry. So I think, and I sent an email out, I think pretty late yesterday. So clearly not enough time to get onto this PowerPoint, but we had Jermaine Holloway come and present to us at, I think, our last meeting. So he's like, I think, known as the tall cop, who has spent a lot of, I think, his professional life helping states and organizations and nonprofits and folks learn about drug-related trends and like up and coming drug-related trends. Because part of the problem and what this recommendation is trying to get to the heart of is we know that opioids are an issue. We know that illicit illegal drugs are an issue, right? Like there's no doubt. We know fentanyl. We know methamphetamines, all of the different drug lists that we've been tasked with as the SURG to try to figure out, and as the response committee, how can we help our communities better respond? And what we continue to see as a need is that there is this illegal drug adjacent population or like grouping of drugs that our kids have access to, that folks that are perhaps involved with drug court have access to, that our laws in the state of Nevada are not really set up to address. And yet these drugs are just as dangerous. They're killing just as many individuals in our communities, but they're for purchase available over the counter. And many of them are packaged in packaging that presents them as like health foods in some situations, or as like energy boosters, or as like mood enhancers and things like that, but they're actually really dangerous drugs. So like Tall Cop came, he chatted with us, we talked about the components of like kratom, 7-hydroxy I'll kill him, tianeptine, phenibut. Some of these things are Amanita muscania. Some of these things are much like opioids, work just like opioids. Other ones are much like methamphetamines, work just like methamphetamines. Some are more along the lines of like psilocybin mushrooms, work just like that. A lot of these things are super dangerous because Narcan and other of those response mechanisms don't work on them. So it's a huge issue. And so I guess I'm probably enforcing that too much, on the sense of my recommendation is to attempt to figure out how we can get the right law changed to where these things at a minimum are restricted in age sales to folks over the age of 21. And then that the labeling standards within the state of Nevada require them to be clear on what they are, not allow them to be, marketed as something of which they're not. But doing some research, so Tall Cop recommended when he was with us to look at the state of Indiana and the state of Alabama, and then I guess also recently Florida are, this is a sign I'm talking too much, the forerunners in getting some legislation passed at their state level to address this very same issue. So I sent Terry and Crystal a list of language last night. Again, I'm being a parrot because I'm not a pharmacist. Don't even have time, I think, in my lifespan to go figure that stuff out. But thank you so much, Crystal, for your magic. But this is what is in. What they recommend is that it goes through the pharmacy or the NAC, and that these things get added as a Schedule I narcotic, because then existing law allows them to be enforced as such, which then makes them illegal to be sold in the state of Nevada. So this would be what we would recommend, that they get added to the Schedule I in the state of Nevada, and that it would include all of these words. And then with that, there is a conflict with NRS 597.998, because NRS 597.998 actually allows for the legal sale of kratom, and it's those mitragine, 7-hydroxymitragine. I'm probably saying that totally wrong. But NRS allows for that right now. And so it perhaps is bold, but I'm recommending to this through our committee, if you guys all agree, then we want to vote this forward, that we would repeal that section of NRS, make kratom not legal, knowing that it is dangerous, and then add these to the Schedule I.
Thank you. I appreciate that very thorough explanation of this recommendation. And I just want to highlight, I believe Darla from Board of Pharmacy is on with us. If she has any thoughts or anything she'd like to say regarding this recommendation.
Hi, this is Darla with the Board of Pharmacy, and I do want to clarify one thing. Tianeptine is already in a Schedule I in Nevada, and the mitragynine and the 7-hydroxymitragynine are currently not scheduled, Dr. Shayla was correct on that. But let me just tell you how this normally happens when we do schedule a substance in Nevada. Typically, we attend the quarterly crime lab meetings, and they make a recommendation to us. And then that recommendation goes forward to our board of pharmacy, and then we put it on our agenda. We give the background information as to why something should be scheduled, and then they actually go through the process. It goes back to LCB for language approval. Once our board approves it, we go to public hearing. We go, the whole workshop process. So, but yes, tianeptine is already scheduled in Nevada. Yeah,
Well,
so that
it's
is
already a
something that
win.
we're
We're
pharmacy.
quarter of
Yeah.
the way there. That's excellent news.
Darla, thank you for that. I appreciate it. I know that the next quarterly drug lab meeting is next Tuesday. That may be too
Yes.
early to get it on. I do attend those and can discuss this at that meeting unless Shayla, you want to attend and also discuss it.
Yeah, I mean, if my schedule allows, I never want to be the person to stand in the way of progress. So Terry, I think you're also an excellent person to discuss these needs. And so based off of what we've learned from Tall Cop and other research that I've done on the side is that these drugs are very difficult because they're not actually being tested for anywhere, right? Like they're not being tested for in, drug court. They're not being tested for during seizures. They're not being tested for in the standard ways of which I am aware of how these things come about. So I'm not sure what you guys typically need as far as data to support adding things to that. I'm not sure where that needs to come from. So I don't know if you are able to share how that type of data is typically presented or what sources it typically comes from for us to see if that even exists at this point in time in the state of Nevada, because it exists in some of our adjacent states, but I don't know if it exists here.
Terry,
Yes,
this is Darla with the Board of Pharmacy. Am I allowed to?
please, and
Okay.
go ahead.
So I guess this would be a great question for our crime lab to see if they can even test for it. So next week during our meeting, Terry, maybe we could bring this up and see if they can even test for these substances.
So
Yeah,
this
that's
is, I'm sorry,
go
this
ahead.
is Nicole Hicks with the DA's office. So the crime lab only does the initial testing for when someone's arrested, but drug court testing is done by Aber Health. And so it's really Aber Health. I need to talk to my drug court DAs to see. I know we can test for many of these different substances. And I know many of the participants are positive for these substances. I just can't remember if it's automatically tested or if Aber Health, I just can't remember how it's working because it's a brand new testing company that we're using here in drug court in Washoe County.
Member Hicks,
That's
I
really
hate
cool,
to interrupt.
Nicole. Thank
Oh,
you.
sorry, Dr. Holmes. I just
Oh, no,
wanted
you're
to
good.
see if you could spell that for us for the minute.
Sure. Aber, AVER, Health, HEALTH.
Thank you.
Shayla, did you have something else you wanted to add?
No, just that's really cool that they're able to do that. That it seems like maybe we are starting to move in that direction to be able to recognize and respond to some of these alternative substances. So I just think it's cool to learn that, there is some things being done that aren't publicly available for us to find out without meetings like this. But it's exciting to hear that some of that stuff's already taking place. And so how we can support that continuing to move in that direction and give it some teeth would be great.
Member Hicks, I have the question too. If these substances aren't already on the panel that Aber Health is testing for, I guess my question would be, what would be the cost to get those added when you talk to them?
Well, I think that's a good question. Aber, AverHealth is, like I said, it's brand new. We're trying to give everybody a little bit of grace at the beginning of using them, just because it has been so difficult. But like what's being stated, it's not illegal to test positive for some of these substances. So if a drug court participant is testing positive, they'll say exactly what we've been talking about. Oh, I get it from, the five and dime, and it's over the counter, it's for energy, it's for losing weight, it's whatever. All of these different reasons. So if it's a substance that is prohibited, then it would be much easier to test for them and then have them not able to use it. So I don't know what the cost would be. I'm not sure if they can do it. I think they can. They have a really extensive, obviously, testing ability. It just, as of right now, it's not necessary because it's not illegal.
Yeah, and I think just for clarification, Shayla, your recommendation is for people under the age of, is it 21?
Well, I think that's where we were at originally. And then looking at the other states and what they've done. So I guess this is like a jump straight to the most restrictive, right? So our NRS already allows for the sale of kratom. I think we could further restrict that if we want, if this is not the appetite of the board, I think we could perhaps reduce the recommendation to be and figure out the language that makes these substances restricted by age and requires these manufacturers to have clear labeling as to what their effects are and what their chemical content is. Because that is a part of the issue with informed consumption, right? Is that if it's like a mood enhancer, but it's not very clear on what the actual chemical content is, while we do have our individuals that are struggling with addiction, working their treatment, they may or may not be aware, as Tall Cop shared with us. A lot of folks know exactly what these chemicals are and what the effects are going to produce, and they're utilizing it as a crutch or a workaround to their treatment. So that's an issue for folks trying to seek treatment when these things are readily available and an alternative. But there's also this other grouping of individuals and our younger folks who are not as aware of the chemical content, come in contact with these things and believe, based off its marketing, that it is safe for consumption because it's available over the counter and it's a mood enhancer and it's an energy provider and it's, it's just like drinking a Monster, right? But it has all these other very negative and really scary potential for, if we consume in excess, it could kill you. So I think that this recommendation is the go get them approach, add it to Schedule 1, make it illegal. I think that's perhaps what I think is safest for our communities and gives the most teeth to our drug courts, gives the most teeth to our sheriff's departments, gives the safest approach, I think, for our communities at large if we want to be a state that doesn't stand for these things. But if that is not the appetite of, the boards, and with NRS 597.998 already in existence, maybe we could go with a softer approach, which then limits the access to these things via an age restriction and clear labeling.
Yeah, that makes sense. So it sounds like talking to the participants in the quarterly drug lab meetings would be our next step. Any other comments or recommendations or thoughts on this recommendation from committee members?
I'll jump in just briefly. Is there a particular reason we're looking at just Schedule 1 for all these substances and not other schedules, like Schedule 2, for example? Like some of these have some like very limited data, like phenibut, like there is some data from like the 1960s for some possible medical uses. Are we excluding it from those on purpose? I'm not the expert in this field. I just want to make sure if we're going to create, a criminal condition for this, that it makes sense that we're doing that.
Shayla, if you can answer that.
I, much like you, Peter, am not the expert in the, each of these substances and what that looks like. I think their current usage is on the illicit drug side. And while maybe there's room in Schedule 2, I think that's where we might have to engage folks with a better understanding of what that looks like than us. This was literally me just researching what other states have done to tackle the problem and recommending that we follow what some of these other states have done. And so they went Schedule 1. What their research was, I didn't do too much on the back end. I did find a couple names of some folks that did this work in Indiana and Alabama and Florida. They might be able to help us understand how they got to that point. I am just being a really good parrot right now.
Darla, do you have any additional information on the scheduling?
No, I don't. Not at this time. I think we have to go through the crime lab like we originally discussed.
This is Dave Weist from the executive board, and Darla has covered me, but which product are we talking about right now, or all of them, or?
I think the question addresses all of them. Why are we looking at them being Schedule 1? Is that
Yeah,
correct,
so I
Pete?
think that the first under A, which is kratom or components of kratom, the DEA attempted to schedule it. It was very close to being scheduled, and then for political reasons was removed. In the state, we have also made the attempt to schedule it. We basically use a lot of the FDA data when we do that. So does it have a medical need, and is it addicted? So that, I mean, we look at those components, and that's what the board, I know Darla already went through that. For the other ones, those are crime lab issues, and I'm sure Darla explained that it's just what are we seeing in the state and what are they testing for? So I know the board's appetite is probably to re-look at the kratom products, of just lumping them all together. And there might be a pathway of allowing some and not allowing others. I don't know. And I'm available offline to have a broader discussion if somebody's interested in them.
Great, Dave. Thank you for
I'll
jumping in.
put my contact information in the chat.
Peter, does that better address your question?
It does, yeah. I mean, especially if we're looking at it for, minors or persons that are 21, it makes a lot more sense, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Anything else on this recommendation?
One more thing on the kratom product, since there seems to be. Work closely with the coroner's office, and historically the deaths that are around kratom have been cofactored with other drugs that people are taking, and so I think the public has a sense that if it was kratom by itself, it wouldn't cause these problems or it wouldn't cause death. But I do know, particularly in northern Nevada, that there's been a couple direct correlated deaths related to just kratom. And they testified to the legislature. There was an attempt to give the Board of Pharmacy some extra jurisdiction over kratom and try to regulate it for purity, and kind of like maybe cigarettes a little bit. I think the Board of Pharmacy declined on that because we kind of saw it as a Schedule 1 drug. They went to the Department of Agriculture twice, and those bills did not pass. So again, available afterwards if somebody's really interested in that story, I can talk to them, wherever they are on the side of kratom. Okay, thanks.
Thanks, Dave. I appreciate that. At this point, I think we've covered it, and we have a little more work to do, it sounds like, on this one. So we'll move forward with those recommendations, specifically looking at talking to the quarterly drug lab group. Okay, at this point, we'll move on to the next recommendation, which was one that I had submitted previously and brought back again with some additional language. And what we found in the past with the diversion and deflection programs is there was really not a good way to measure them against each other because they were all using different definitions of recidivism. So that was really the impetus for trying to at least have standard reporting and standard definitions of those state agencies that are providing funding for these diversion and deflection teams, is that the state agency have a definition and policies related to the measuring and reporting of recidivism. And as we worked along, specifically looking at Washoe County, they also had started looking at desistance programs. And my simplistic way of addressing desistance is it's really a better, potentially more accurate way to measure the program impacts. So it's not just, the person didn't recidivate or recidivated less, but what was it in the program that led to those behavioral changes? And that's what desistance looks at. I know that Washoe County is again looking at some additional desistance and looking at a more national program for desistance. So I want to follow up with Washoe to find out what they're doing and also to try to get some funding for these programs, the desistance specifically, and also to have evaluation of their desistance program. I don't know if anyone has any questions or any thoughts on adding the desistance. I would add that per Stephanie Cook with DPBH, she said they, on their strategic mapping, they did have the sequential intercept model, which is where the deflection, diversion, and desistance fall. And they had that as one of their metrics for looking at their programs. And she just said they're in the early stages of mapping out their sequential intercept model. It's known as the SIM, and how they're contributing and supporting various efforts throughout the state. They're waiting to get a position filled to help with some of their work. And it's been recommended that they connect with Amy Lucas out of the Office of Analytics. And DPBH has been in conversation with other states to learn how they commonly define recidivism. So I would think that out of DPBH, they're probably the main funder of the diversion and deflection programs from the grant funding. So we'll continue to follow up with Stephanie Cook on what she's found out on definitions of recidivism. We had looked at the model out of Wisconsin that does have statewide definitions. I think they have it in their statute as well. And in talking with Washoe County, they liked that program because it really does give you specific definitions and specific metrics. So it looks at time frames. It looks at, whether you also include maybe lesser violations as opposed and the frequency of those violations. So those are all things that we'll have to look at. Any questions or comments on adding desistance to the definition for recidivism for our deflection and diversion programs?
Terry, this is Shayla. I'm a big fan of this recommendation. And as we've started to try to incorporate some of these concepts out, at least in Lyon County's FAST program, I think it really does change the perspective of how you look at working with the individual, which I think always has bigger impact. And it really helps with staff engagement. It's kind of like a tertiary impact. But when staff have just a black and white, you came back and they internalize that as a failure because we recidivated and now my program didn't work. But when we encourage them to look deeper and have those conversations and start collecting the data on, was it a reduced crime? Is it a longer period of time since the last one? Was it a change in behavior that got here? So maybe it was a lesser behavior than the first time. Staff have really found a more meaningful way to engage with the client. And when you have that hope as the person doing the work, you're more likely to have that positive outcome with the client too. So it's like a tertiary thing is what we're just seeing with trying to figure this out locally, but the staff have really found new positive engagement with the work doing it with this lens too.
That's good to know. Thank you for that additional information. And I just wonder if Peter and Nicole, if either of you have any comment on this, how it would help, or would it help your programs, and your thoughts?
So this is Peter. No, I still love this recommendation as a one, like it's getting to our core mission, right, of actually assisting our clients. Like they're not going to be returning if we actually get assistance out of them. So I think it's a great way to keep analyzing. And when we're going through, different iterations of these kinds of programs, we're getting better data to see how long assistance lasts and whether certain modalities are working better and trying to implement those. So I think this is probably the best way to analyze that versus recidivism or something, because it might not even be related to underlying use.
Thank you. I appreciate that feedback. Nicole, do you have any thoughts?
I think it's thank you. It's Nicole. I think it's a great idea. I think it would be difficult to implement on a actual working basis. I feel like that's, I kind of reflected on, I'm in competency court. That's the court that I cover. And we do what we call as a harm reduction. It's not really, you know, it's just more of a harm reduction. Has this person not been in the jail system for longer than 3 months? Well, in our mind, for a competency court participant, that might be a win. And so I do think that that's kind of what we're getting at. And then defining it, I think, is really important, recidivism, because it's something as a prosecutor we obviously look at. And it's not always, number of convictions. It really does matter what the definition would be. I just wonder if it would be difficult to implement. That's my only concern about it. But I like it. I hope we can
Yeah.
do something.
And that was why we thought the state agencies that fund these programs to have a definition, and then they can push it down to their sub-grant awardees about using those definitions. Because I know in the programs that we, through the AG's office, supported, it was really hard because we were comparing apples to oranges because they all had different definitions based per county. So. Okay, we can keep this. Any other thoughts or questions on this recommendation? I will follow up, especially with Washoe, to talk to them about the program they're looking at and see how that aligns with this recommendation. And thank you, Shayla, for your input on this as well with your programs. I think we're ready to move on to our potential recommendation number 3. Which right now we just have a placeholder. I need to go through the recommendation process and get it put on if it's something that we want to move forward with. And this originally was to work with the Board of Pharmacy to include safe RX kits with opiate prescriptions and look into how a prescription can be written for opiate antagonist when opiates are prescribed to reduce cost. And one of the things that I would add on here is that I know you can't see this, it's blurry, but this is a one-pager that that I received with a prescription that I had, which was the reason that this recommendation came about. And part of it is just other things to consider with opiate prescriptions. It talks about some of the data around opioid prescriptions and people not using them correctly, not necessarily disposing them, talk about the overdose risk, talk about again disposal and the provision of the Dispose RX kits so that people can dispose of them. And then they talk about some tips for keeping yourself and your family safe, and talk about, not taking it with certain other types of medications, not taking it for longer than needed. Talk about naloxone or Narcan. Don't give your medication to someone else, or leave it where it's unsecured, where others might get it. Don't take more than the prescribed amount. Don't drink alcohol. And then it also provides the national helpline for addiction and pain management. It's in English and Spanish and is provided. So one of the things I was advocating was to see if it would be worthwhile trying to have this information also provided when those disposed RX kits are provided. And I would add that I spoke to somebody since our last meeting, and they had a similar experience as I did, except they had said twice they didn't want opiates, but still received an opiate prescription, and then went to a different pharmacy just to get naloxone so they would have it, and it free of charge. And at first we're told they couldn't get it, but then the person went and talked to the pharmacist, and the pharmacist said that they did have it, and they did have it free of charge. So the person was able to get it at a different pharmacy free, and that's the naloxone. So thoughts, comments, and I would look to Dave and Darla if you have any additional information on this.
Yeah, I think so. We were asked, did we have any experience with this? So I can give and I appreciate you guys letting us speak today. We have done this in the past. I'll describe that real quickly. We've had back right before COVID, we had an insurance company that wanted to do some outreach with it, so they purchased it. They gave it to the board, thousands of kits, and then we distributed to the pharmacies. So if that's something that you want to do, any role that we can support. The issue always is funding. And so I think, you have to have a funding component of this. I think generally the pharmacists like it. I do know that you can run to any pharmacy and you can get, like you can for any doctor or any police officer, you can get different answers to the same question that aren't right. So it's all education. But as a general rule,
Just a heads up, the doors.
the general rule of, the pharmacists and the pharmacies are still engaged in this activity. They're not, they still know that they need to do things with opioids. And so if there's any way we can assist or answer any questions, happy to do that. But I think it comes down to how we fund it. And of course, the Resilient Nevada, we do have access to that. We're in the middle of a bill passed where we're putting receptacles right now. 231, you probably have talked about it. We're putting receptacles in pharmacies, and while that's challenging, we will get to the finish line on that. So if there's something that we can do, we will happy to do it.
Thank you. I appreciate the background that you provided. And I would just add that I did reach out to the Fund for Resilient Nevada to see if this is something that could be funded out of that fund. And I have a meeting scheduled with them sometime within the next 2 weeks. So more to come on this.
Yeah, I can give some visibility on that because we were slightly involved in that, of course. Generally, the people that agreed to that settlement won't allow us to use the funds to enforce anything on them. That's the gist of what the settlement looks like. So we can't use it to bring more investigators in so things like this, I think, would easily fall inside the Resilient Nevada program.
Good to know. Thank you. I appreciate that. So Crystal, I promise that I'll get in and fill out all of the rest of the information for this information, and just feedback from the board members if this is a recommendation that you think we should move forward with.
You get my 2 thumbs up.
This is Bud, also thumbs up.
Okay,
This is Peter, also a thumbs up.
great. All right, I'll do my due diligence and get this submitted as a full recommendation. At this point, I know that no other recommendations were submitted through SEI, but just want to poll the members if anybody has one or anybody's thinking of one. Just please go off mute and say.
Chariots, but I'm pondering one at least, but I'm really not even ready to vocalize what that is
Okay.
exactly.
Okay, that's fine. That's no problem. And I know, especially for our new members, you kind of have a shortened time frame to get recommendations for this report, which is August 1st. So, understanding that if it's something too, Bud, that we can work on. If you feel like it's too much for this annual report and recommendations, that we can work on for our next ones as well.
Yeah, it's related to, and we can talk more maybe offline. You can give me some guidance, but really on trying to come up with some language, perhaps giving guidance for EMS responses related to, yeah, never mind. We'll talk about it.
Okay, that sounds good. Thank you. I didn't
Carrie,
see
the only
anyone
other
else.
thing, oh, sorry. The only other
Go.
thing that I'd add is out here in Lyon County, we're hosting a community summit in March. And so there is potential for perhaps something to surface that from our community partners at that event. So I may come back with something, but I've got nothing in the works right now.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. And like I said, if the time frame is something that's concerning to someone because we have to have these ready and have them approved pretty much by June of this year, so that they can get approved by the full surge in the July meeting, then we can definitely look at those for the next round of recommendations. Okay, at this point, I think we're ready to move on to item number 6, which is a review of the 2026 Response Subcommittee meeting topics and timelines. So, February, which is this meeting, we wanted to discuss our preliminary recommendations, which we did. And I think right now we're pretty firm on those 3 recommendations. So in March, we will discuss these recommendations again. And if anyone has subject matter experts that they want to present on any of the recommendations, we can do that. And it may be a case specifically for our recommendation number 1, we may have more guidance from the drug lab group. So we'll have that to discuss as well. Then in May 2026, finalize our proposed recommendations so they can be presented at the June SURG meeting. I think I said July. I should have said June. And any subject matter expert presentations again. So committee members, if you have someone in mind for any recommendations, please let Crystal Duarte know. And then in June of 2026, we would need to revise and finalize our recommendation based on the feedback from the full surge meeting. And then September, it would be subject matter expert presentations as requested. So, Crystal, do you have anything to add to this timeline?
I just wanted to note that we typically try not to have a meeting of the full surge and of the subcommittee in the same month, but you will notice that in June that is different. We are going to meet as a subcommittee after the June surge meeting so that you all can take any advice or feedback from members of other committees and incorporate that into the recommendations. Sometimes that process involves combining a recommendation with one from another subcommittee. So, but in that month of June, there will be quite a bit of activity. Casey, who's on the call, is going to follow up with everyone with an email just to make sure you have all the correct subcommittee meetings on your calendar. SEI uses Google Calendar, And often when we go to delete a meeting, which I'm not sure has happened for this subcommittee, it doesn't take it off of people with Outlook. It doesn't take it off your calendar. So please look out for that email from Casey and do a confirmation with your own calendar to see that you have meetings in these months on your calendar.
Thank you for that. And I think on the next slide is our full surge meetings. Obviously, we had the January 2026. The full surge will meet again in April. And in that meeting, there will be a presentation on peer certification and state budget process. And then the preliminary recommendations will be provided by the subcommittee chairs. Then in June of 2026, as Crystal noted, that's an additional meeting which will approve the 2025 annual report and finalize the recommendations to be included in the 2025 annual report. And then in July 2026, which is 2026 quarter four, approve the 2025 annual report. And then we'll start it all again for October in 2026 with presentations from subject matter experts. So we've got a lot of stuff going on due to having to have our annual report due August 1st of 2026. I think we're ready to move on to the next slide. So at this point, we'll look at our 2026 response subcommittee members. If anyone has any recommendations for any speakers related to any of these subjects. The only thing that I would add is if I can get someone from the drug lab to come to the meeting, we might want to hear from them. If I can't, then I'll bring back what they discuss in the meeting.
Sorry, Terry, this is Dave. Are you talking
No.
about like a crime lab or what are you?
Yeah, the crime lab. Yeah.
We'll just contact us afterwards. We'll get you somebody we have a couple good people from the crime lab that can come speak to you.
Thank you. If nobody has anything, you can email the staff with any speaker recommendations if nothing comes up right at this time. And we'll move on to the next, which is agenda item number 7 on our agenda, which is public comment. Again, it will be received via Zoom by raising your hand or unmuting yourself when asked for public comment. Please limit it to 3 minutes, and no action can be taken until it's raised as an item on an agenda. And if you're dialing in, dial 719-359-4580. When prompted, enter the meeting ID 884-0825-1817 and press *6 so that the host can unmute you. I would call upon anyone if they have public comment. So do we have public comment? I see Leah Cartwright's hand raised. Please, Leah, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair, and good afternoon, committee. My name is Leah Cartwright. I'm here today on behalf of the Nevada Psychiatric Association. I want to thank the committee, the subcommittee, for taking up the issue of kratom. I appreciate the Board of Pharmacy's comments. I will submit some supporting material to the committee staff. I have death records from Clark County, Washoe County, and reports of kratom. Mitragynine is the drug substance name. From across the state. I would also, if you're open to recommendations, check with Dr. Laura Knight. She is the, and thank you, I see it in the chat there from Crystal. Dr. Laura Knight is the medical examiner in Washoe County. She is a published expert on the effects of kratom or mitragynine. in the general population and has written extensively on the deaths that is caused in Northern Nevada. So I will submit all of that information. It is a bit out of date. It's from 2020, 2021. So I will work on getting some updated information on my end. And I am just grateful to hear this committee taking up that issue. Thank you so much.
Thank you. We appreciate your comment and also the information you'll send to staff. Sounds like she could be a good presenter for us as well. Any other public comment? I don't see any hands raised. I'll defer to you, Crystal. Anybody else?
I don't see hands raised. If that's something that is a little bit clunky for you to find, please just, also you can come off mute and ask to be recognized by the chair. I don't see anyone coming off of mute at this time either.
Okay, great. Thank you. We'll move on to agenda item number 8, which is our adjournment. I want to thank the committee members for, again, your work on these recommendations. It's going to be a fast and furious time, and also thank those who attended the meeting to support us today. And we will see you all at our next meeting. Thank you.
Thanks, Terry. Thanks, Crystal.
Thank you,
Bye,
guys.
Bud. Bye, Shayla.